Hello, Philippines. This is Lecain with World News Jam. We bring you the most interesting stories from around the world each week. We just don't give you the news, but we tell you the story behind the news, as well as read and answer your questions in an entertaining and easy to understand way. So please join us on DZRJ 810 AM Radio Bandito TV and get yourself updated with all the interesting news of the week from around the world right here on DZRJ's World News Jam.
Watch and listen to World News Jam every Sunday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. airing on Sky Cable Channel 224 and on all DTT boxes. Simulcasting online on Facebook and YouTube. Listen and watch on your mobile devices. Just search DZRJ Radio Bandido.
Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZRJ and RJ TV. My name is Lecain, and I'm joined, as always, with the lovely, angelic Lali Tolentino.
Thank you, Eric. You're so generous tonight. You said that I look like, angelic what?
In your white shirt with wings. So, Lali, how was your Thanksgiving? I know Thanksgiving is not really a Filipino holiday, but I know a lot of people talk about it here in the Philippines.
Yeah, well, in the first place, I got invited, Thanksgiving dinner with some friends. And we had a good talk during that night. Of course, great food.
Now, what did you eat?
Turkey, of course.
Turkey and what else? What else did you eat?
Huh?
What were the sides? Because Thanksgiving's all about the sides.
Oh, really? Well, for me, I don't really care. As long as I have the turkey, it's a set menu that we have. Started from the salad, and then before even the main course, the soup and everything, it's all set. So, and with the dessert. So what can I say? Because
I wanted to bring up something, because for me on this Thanksgiving I was by myself, so I went out and bought myself sushi. But on Thanksgiving, for all anybody who doesn't know, you have turkey.
Yeah.
Turkey and mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce and green beans and corn, all that stuff. But Baskin Robbins, the ice cream company, this year for Thanksgiving has a new flavor of the month in November. It's a mixed flavor. It's a flavor of sweet potatoes, cranberries, and honey cornbread in an ice cream.
Really?
And their new slogan is move over, been there, done that, desserts, to this new unofficial dessert of Thanksgiving. But that's not all that Baskin Robbins has done this. They also decided to bring back the iconic turkey cake.
Turkey cake? There's such thing?
It is. Basically, it's ice cream, and they make it into the shape of a turkey.
Oh, okay.
And their ad says, "Nothing gathers people around the table quite like the iconic turkey cake, a dessert that will make anyone do a double take. It's show-stopping, non-traditional tradition. Baskin Robbins takes on the roasted turkey to make it look like it's fresh out of the oven. But it's actually filled with delicious ice cream."
All right, it's full of sugar, in short.
In other words, the legs of the turkey are like ice cream cones, and then it's got caramel over the top of it to make it look brown. But anyway, it actually looks kind of gross. But anyway, they have the turkey cake and the Thanksgiving fixings ice cream that you can get online and relax, knowing that Thanksgiving you will have a turkey day full of yay.
Yay.
I just thought that was so funny when I saw it. By the way, just in case anybody wants to know, Baskin Robbins, they closed down all their stores in Manila last year. But they did have a promo before they left, because I remember when they closed them down. I was so happy. They had a promo that for a special for 3,500 pesos, you could get 86 scoops of ice cream.
What?
And if you eat it all, then you get a free coffin.
Hang on, 3,500 pesos, 86 scoop?
86 scoops of ice cream.
How can you do that by yourself?
I don't.
I mean, that's kind of crazy. But you know what? Okay, let me add something on that Thanksgiving thing. Of course, I texted all my friends, American, my friends in the U.S. and here, and a friend of mine says, Oh, is it today? Well, yeah, it's Thursday today, so today's our Thanksgiving, and tomorrow is the U.S. Oh, maybe I should look. I should go around and find some turkey. I have not eaten a turkey for a year, and I said, well, go and find turkey. In case you did not find turkey, there's chicken. And he said, yeah, it's all over. Chicken is all over here. In fact, I have feathers is growing on me right now.
By the way, everybody out there, chicken and turkey, not the same thing.
I know.
Not the same thing. It seems like it would, because they're kind of similar, but then you take a bite.
Yeah, it tastes different.
I'm not a big fan of turkey.
Well,
I like chicken.
Yeah. Okay, but you know what?
Once a year, I can eat it once a year.
Okay, I'm not really fond of turkey. Chicken is fine.
Chicken's fine. Because we love chicken in the Philippines.
Of course.
You know. But moving over from the Philippines, we got to get to the news here, Lolly. I know I would love to talk about turkey cake ice cream the whole show. But as we know, Lolly, a little more than a month ago, when Hamas breached the security barricade in Israel, they had a plan. Mm-hmm. And that plan, as we know, was to kill Israelis. And they did. Yep. Women and children, old people, we all know. Retribution that they claim was for what all the Palestinians killed by the Israelis, yada, yada, yada. But there was one part of the plan: take hostages. Mm-hmm. And they knew that Israel would retaliate once they did this, and they were counting on that. But, you know, when you're bombing an area, such as Israel has been doing, and there are hostages spread out over that area that you want to attack, the idea is it makes you hesitate. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, you don't want to kill your own people. Mm-hmm. And there's also, you know, what makes your own people turn on you more is when you're not handling hostage negotiations well. And Hamas, you know, they're going to want something in return for those hostages. So they know the families are going to be on TV criticizing the Israeli government for not doing enough. It's all part of the plan that Hamas had. And many around the world have already been putting pressure on Israel to pause the bombing and deal with the issue of hostages. And Israel said, no, we are not doing that until this week. Mm-hmm. And this week, Israel agreed to stop the bombing and make a trade. And the original deal, as I understand it, Lolly, was for supposedly 190 Palestinian prisoners for 50 Israeli hostages. U.S., Qatar, and Egypt brokered a deal for the short term to stop the war and bring in much needed supplies and make this trade. Mm-hmm. And the deal was made. However, at the very last minute, there was a problem. The Hamas didn't like the final numbers, and there was some issue about the amount of the aid delivery, and the thing almost didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So can you imagine being, you know, a family member, and it's like, oh, they're going to release the hostages, and then there's like, oh, wait a minute, no, we're not. And then, you know, the negotiators come in, and they talk, and they work it out. And in the end, anyway, 17 prisoners were allowed to leave Gaza, of the Israeli prisoners, and 39 Palestinians left Israel. You know, as they said, it was touch and go for a while, but they finally got it done. And this was like the second trade of hostages. The first one involved the 24 Israelis. That included a Filipino.
Yeah, there's one Filipino and a Thai. They're Thailanders.
Yeah. There was a bunch of Thai citizens as well. There were a few Thais. I don't know if you knew that. A few Thais that were working in the farms there in Israel that got killed on October 7th, just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah. But of course, you know, there was some very emotional reunions in Israel. Some people who had thought that their relatives and children were dead, and they ended up being part of the trade. Mm-hmm. So, you know, now the question is going to come up, Lolly, what about the rest?
Well, you know, the second batch is done. So what about the third and fourth? Because they have, 4 days truce? And
4 days.
4 days. So second days are over. So, you know, they said that, the U.S. president is expecting that the American citizen will be released too.
Yeah, good luck
but
with that.
You know what? Yeah, good luck. And
Yeah.
you know what? I have something in mind, but I don't want to say it yet.
What could that be, Lolly Tolentino?
Yeah, I mean, because, I don't want to preempt all this plan, and I hope I'm wrong in what I was thinking, because this is not an easy deal. I mean, they have to, because it's Qatari is the one.
It almost didn't
negotiating on
happen. It
behalf.
almost didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. And the good part in the part of the Filipino people is that our we call it kababayan, this guy Pacheco, who is a caregiver there, was released. And the latest that I heard this afternoon is that because they sent everybody to the hospital, and
Yeah, of course.
yeah, he's doing well, and then they're trying to bring him. Maybe hopefully tomorrow he will be on his way to the Philippines.
Yeah.
And you know what, the very emotional part of that, his employer died already, was killed by Hamas, but the family of that family embrace him, and he will be given a lifetime support. I mean, support in terms of finances, I think.
That's great. That's
Which
great.
is a great one, because, oh my God, who else would, offer or give that kind of thing?
I mean, for that's going to the absolute, edge to be. I mean, I'm sure when he went to Israel, he did not think. Now, if I was a Filipino going to Afghanistan or Iraq, you take your chances. You're there, but I don't know if I would have thought that going to Israel this would have happened.
Yeah.
So the fact that it did, and he survived it. I mean, I was thinking about this. I mean, can you imagine when Hamas is coming in, and then you want to go, I'm Filipino, I'm cool, But there's supposedly there's 200, maybe 200 people left. The only people that they returned in this last one were just women and children. And of course, the Palestinians, they celebrated in the streets when the Palestinians were coming. But remember, there's a difference between, Hamas was turning over hostages while Israel was turning over prisoners. And part of what, supposedly, Hamas's reasoning for all the things that they've done was because of these prisoners. And, I think it was 22 women and girls and 15 young boys from Israel. And, Israel has gotten a lot of criticism for the prisoners that they have taken because a lot of the prisoners are, like I said, women and young children. And they don't call them prisoners. They're being held under administrative detention. But in any case, I mean, they did finally make a deal. It was not the deal that was originally put on the table. In fact, it's way less. But at least it was something, because at one point it was really touch and go. In fact, I actually thought this is not going to happen. When you listen to that guy from Hamas when he spoke, it's like, because they said that Israel was not standing up to its end of the agreement. And when he said that, then the third parties all jumped in, the U.S. and Qatar and Egypt, they all jumped in and said, okay, listen, let's work this out, let's smooth this out. And then they changed the numbers a little bit, and finally they said, okay, we agreed to this. And I think right up until the very end, a lot of people really worried when they were even walking across that, like, something's going to happen.
Yeah, I saw all this thing. And you know what? My only worry here is that I hope, the third and fourth batch will be like almost the same what happened, same thing. I hope that there will be no other, worst thing could happen to them, because, they can just change their mind at the last minute because of something. And
yeah, even the littlest, word.
Yeah.
And it was something to do with, an issue with the aid. Like there was 8 trucks and there was supposed to be 9 or 7 trucks. It was supposed to be 8.
Something like that. Yeah.
It was something kind of like just slightly off. So these things are so delicate in how they do it. And even Israel came out and said, Israel, they bombed them right up until the minute where the ceasefire was supposed to. I mean, literally like a minute before, they were still throwing down bombs. And they said, okay, well, it's 4 days, but if you want a 5th day, give us 10 prisoners. give us 10 hostages and we'll give you an extra day. And it's almost like it's a, it's a sale at a grocery store.
Yeah.
Give us 10 more hostages, you get one more day.
Yeah.
And of course, Hamas was like, we're not doing that. But interesting, I guess, for Israel to give that a try. But I think that, the U.S. president came out this week and he says, we're very happy that we were able to pull this off. However, there are 3 Americans that we would really like to get back, and they're not going to stop until they're able to get those 3 Americans back.
Yeah, we'll just hope and pray that, they will fulfill whatever they have agreed on, because this is something that, of course, if they're my relatives or even friends, I mean, I don't even know them, but I want them back. Whoever are the hostages, I want them all back to their families. I mean, nobody wants this. They did not expect this.
If they had have expected it, then it wouldn't have happened. I mean, for sure. I mean, like I said, there was a whole lot of people that said this is going to happen. That's the problem. That's what a lot of criticism that Israel has gotten is because they said, hey, something's going wrong. Something is happening. You can't put a force like that together and send them over the border without somebody seeing it. And the U.S. saw it. The Egyptians saw it. They all know that something was happening. And then Israel just kind of like, this happens all the time. And then, it was a lot worse than they expected it would be. I mean, literally nobody thought that they would ever do something like this. I mean,
and I hope it will not happen again.
And you see these reunions. I mean, what was the girl? Was she 7 years old? 7 or 9 years old. I mean, they kept him over there for how many days? Since October 7th. And then she shows up. Her father thought she was dead. For all this time. Her father's been grieving because he thought she was dead. And then all of a sudden, she's part of the hostages.
Wow. I mean, that's who... I mean, if that is your daughter, oh my goodness.
And you're watching these reunions, and they're very, heart-wrenching to watch.
Yeah.
Because you see the kid being brought in, and you see, the young boy that they brought in. This film has been shown a lot. The young boy, and he's standing at the end of the hall, and he sees his father, and he just runs in his father's arms. But a lot of this is very emotional for these people to get back together with their families. And the worst thing is that when someone comes back or a hostage is released, but someone else from the family is still there.
Yeah.
So, but I know it's going to be, tough, especially on the children that have been waiting for so long, sitting in a place with bombs dropping all around them.
Well, the trauma alone, wow.
I'm sure it's gonna take a while, but let's see. They believe there are something like 200 people still left in Gaza, and of course Israel has got lots of prisoners, so they got prisoners to swap. That's why somebody asked me, why is there such a discrepancy? Because, and I know this sounds really bad, but Israeli prisoners, are more valuable than Palestinian prisoners, and that's horrible to say. But originally, it was supposed to be like 190 prisoners from this Palestinian side, and they were going to swap them for around 50 some Israeli prisoners, and then it got whittled down to what it finally was. But they're going to start bombing again. I'm sure the minute the clock hits, the final hour, they'll start bombing again. But hopefully, in between that time, maybe there can be something else negotiated.
Yeah, hopefully. My prayer is that for this war to stop, period.
Yeah, I mean, Israel, every so often they have a war. And this is another war, although, this one is a little different because a lot more people are getting killed in this war than the previous 3 wars before. So, part of it's technology. Technology has taken a big step up we're getting better at killing each other. And so this is something that makes it even more scary. So hopefully they can get this thing figured out. I know the U.S. is in there trying to put the reins on this. So is other countries, some Middle Eastern countries are trying to hopefully calm this whole thing down to a ceasefire so they can at least get something. They can get something worked out. Now, there's other countries that want to see this war escalate. So, there's a balancing act that's got to go on.
there's always politics inside. So what can you do?
Yeah, looking at, and here again, we're kind of moving down the reign of the list of news stories. We're looking around the world at all these, anti-democratic leaders, and sometimes I have to say, in some of these countries, right now in the world, they're becoming more popular than democratic leaders. Sometimes they get more airtime than anyone else. Putin and Xi, they're at the top of the list. Many people around the world believe, and we're getting on to another subject here, that those kind of leaders are the type of leaders that they need. Strongman tells us what to do. Someone to rule our country that will deny the population the right to have a say in how the society is ordered. Of course, the most famous of these people that I can recall is the leader, of course, of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and his father and his father's father, who have ruled North Korea since the very beginning. And they have had poverty and chronic food shortages, police state, prison camps. You must wear your hair according to the state artwork that's hanging in the barbershop. So North Korea doesn't have much, but one thing that North Korea has is weapons. It's the #1 resource in North Korea, and at one point North Korea was leaning toward giving up some of those weapons, mostly from pressure from the West due to the sanctions, and it was killing the people in the country. However, of course, as we all know, the previous president of the United States screwed that all up. And now Kim is falling back in the other direction, working toward a high-end nuclear missile. And of course, he now has, I think we were talking about it maybe 3 weeks ago, the spy satellites that he launched into outer space. So while we're focused on the Russians and the Ukrainians and the Israelis and the Hamas and even China and Taiwan, North Korea, right now, this week, is still moving in the wrong direction because, and I'll get your comment on this, Lolly, North Korea said Thursday it's going to deploy all new military hardware along the military demarcation line that separates it from South Korea. Mm-hmm. And this happened after Seoul partially pulled back from that 2018 agreement, which was designed to ease tensions in that area, where everybody would, this is how many guns you can have, and this is how many guns you can have. And North Korea decided, they acted after the Seoul vowed to increase its intelligence and surveillance along the demilitarized zone because North Korea launched those spy satellites, which they say, according to analysts, that now it gives Pyongyang information on its targets and where they are, especially in places like, cities like Seoul. So this document that was entitled Inter-Korean Military Agreement, it was signed back in 2018 as part of these efforts with the U.S. to contain the threat of war on the Korean Peninsula, offer a buffer zone between the two Koreas. But anyway, any goodwill generated by that agreement, of course, now is evaporated. Kim did not get the concessions he wanted from the U.S. and South Korea, so he's ramped up his ballistic missile program, got his nuclear missiles program off the ground again, and he's shot all these spy satellites up in the air so he can watch his enemies. So now Seoul is like, well, if you're going to do that, then we're going to do this. And then North Korea says, well, if you're going to do that, then we're going to put a whole bunch new weapons right here on the demilitarized zone pointed right at you.
Oh, my goodness. Sometimes if you're going to listen to this story, sometimes for me I get headache. Because why are they?
North Korea gives me a headache.
Yeah, that gives you a headache. Like thinking, why are they doing it? Like that North Korea. Oh, I'm gonna do this because of this. Oh my goodness. Sometimes that's why sometimes I get lazy of watching the news already.
No, I know what you mean.
I just want to entertain myself, not listening or watching this kind of news. And you know what? What if Eric? What if one day you go to Korea and all of a sudden something happened? Like there's a bombing or there's a rocket or spaceship. I don't know. And you're there and you cannot do anything because everybody should stay, because this kind of thing that could, scare people. Even if you're just talking to some balut vendor somewhere here, if they talk about this, they get scared. What will happen?
Yeah, well, the one thing
Or
that, of
neighbor.
course, a lot of people are worried about is an accident.
Yeah.
If accidentally, something happened, and a missile were to accidentally go off, or something, a plane were to accidentally, veer off and fly over the wrong place or something like that, I mean, would the other side think it's an attack and fire off missiles, which would in turn make the other place to fire off missiles? And literally, according to what I understand, and we've talked about this multiple times on the show, once this gets started, it'll happen in seconds. Like
Wow.
the ability for North Korea to fire off thousands of missiles right at Seoul can be done in a matter of seconds. And so this is, I think, what, part of the reason what this agreement was originally designed to do was to make sure that something like that did not happen. So they made an agreement that says, all right, listen, you can have this many missiles, and this is what they are, and this is the safety protocols, and we'll have this many missiles, and that's what we're due, but we're not going to go any farther. And then, North Korea, being who they are, they said, well, we have the right, since you have all these spy satellites up there, we have the right to have our own spy satellites up there. And so somehow they were able to get the technology, and they fired a rocket up into space. And then the South Koreans are like, we have to do something. We have to do something. And so they had to take countermeasures for the spy satellites now. And then, of course, that gives North Korea a reason to up their ante. So now everybody's had to rip up the agreement that they took so long to put together.
I know.
And now Japan's involved. So North Korea, there was this buildup, in response to what the North Koreans did this week, and this just happened, literally just a couple days ago. The U.S. and South Korea and Japan have stepped up all their military cooperation between them. They started doing exercises and deployments that, Pyongyang is going to look at and look at as a threat.
Yeah.
And they have gone at, in fact, I think it was yesterday, where North Korea denounced the United States for the sales of advanced missiles to Japan and military equipment to South Korea, calling it a dangerous act. So, if, somebody like this, leader, whatever, calls it a dangerous act, but when Kim Jong-un says this, it makes me worry.
Yeah.
Because he's not,
Yeah,
he's
this
a little
guy
crazy.
He's a different. This guy has a different thinking. So he's like a kid to me. So if he thinks that all this missile or whatever, it probably he's just thinking like a toy. So once he gets mad, he can just push the button and that's it.
And his people will not defy him. Like in the United States, when Trump wanted to use the military to go against his own citizens, and the military was like, hey, we're not doing that. In North Korea, they would do it immediately.
Remember always, they are a communist country. Whoever the leader is, they follow what he says. Unlike in the U.S.
Socialist country might be. I understand. Speaking of the thing that I worry about most is, first of all, the accident happens, or secondly, right now, Russia is fighting the Ukraine. And what if, and that's going to go on, and Israel is now fighting Hamas. And I don't think China, especially after what happened last week there in the United States, I don't think China would attack Taiwan, but I don't think they're going to stop doing what they're doing, flybys and running their boats through the Philippine Sea and all this kind of thing. So there's going to be all this tension over there anyway. And I just think that while all that's going on, I think this is a chance for North Korea to finally, and North Korea knows that if they do this, right now, they have a lot of military weapons, but they don't have a lot of food. And if something like this were to happen, it would literally destroy the country. We have to wait in our lifetime, because we think, oh, this will not happen in our lifetime. But it could.
Yeah, it could.
Things are escalating all over the world. We never would have thought what happened in October 7th in Israel would have ever happened. And then it did.
Well,
So,
I know.
Speaking of things to make us choke, this week, moving over to the United States here, Donald Trump was hit with a gag order. Now, in case you don't know,
can you explain, Eric, what is gag order?
it does not mean that you cannot stick your fingers in your mouth and make yourself throw up. It actually means that you can't say or post anything that might get someone killed. Now, the problem with the story this week is trying to figure out, of course, which trial is the gag order for? Because honestly, I watch the news all the time, and sometimes I get confused. When they're talking about this gag order, I'm like, wait a minute, for what? Which trial? Because there's 4 going on. And right, every time there's a gag order, then Trump's lawyers have to appeal that gag order, and that's what happened this week. And the only reason I wanted to bring this up, because A, it was the top news story coming out of the United States, but what most of us would do, realistically, if the judge said, if you speak to the press or about this case, or you threaten the prosecutor, or you threaten the witnesses, I will put you in jail. Most likely, most people would comply, but not Donald Trump. In fact, he does exactly the opposite.
Yep.
And so in his federal election subversion case that's going on right now, he's threatened multiple people, including Jack Smith, the prosecutor, and his staff. The problem is Trump is saying that if they are coming after me, that really means that they're coming after you, the people of the thing. And then he names people. He names people that he doesn't like. That, you know, it may be the prosecutor, which we all know, but it may be somebody that works for the prosecutor, or somebody that works in the judge's office. And then his followers will find out who these people are. Sometimes very innocent people, just doing their job. You know, nobody. I don't want to say nobodies, but people that are not really involved so much. And Trump's MAGA followers, they will publish their phone numbers, their email addresses, sometimes their physical home addresses. And so that's why the judge is like, he has to put these gag orders in effect to try and stop this problem, because Trump keeps, every time he puts the gag order in, Trump violates the gag order. So then the judge fines Donald Trump $10,000. That's meaningless to a guy like Trump.
Yeah, I mean, that's nothing. That $10,000, that's peanuts.
That's what he spends on dinner. So, you know, he just pays it, and he sends his lawyers in to fight the gag order. Who would do that? Anyway, so to make it legal, for what Trump wants to say, he wants to say anything he wants to say. And, you know, he went after one of the assistants of one of the judges. Somebody was just there, you know, keeping track of papers. And he started naming her name, and this is just getting out of, you know, crazy out of control. So we're not only watching the Trump legal battles, but we're watching the sideline battles, which is what he wants. You know, he's facing 4 criminal trials. At the same time, there's an election going on this year, and he's in the lead. He's in the lead to win the presidency. So if the judge rules against him, which, Lolly, I think is going to happen, what do you think Trump is going to do? Will he continue to threaten the judges and the prosecutors? Or if he does, will they put him in jail like they would me and you?
Well, the problem with Trump is that, you know, like you said, he doesn't really listen to anyone. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Supreme Court or whoever judges, he doesn't respect them. For me, he's not respecting those people, you know, because he's a different kind of person. You know, all these things, because even here in the Philippines, isn't it that when you got caught, the policeman said, okay, you have the right to remain silent. You know, because anything you said will be used against you, something like that. But we basically, you know, I don't hear any Filipinos saying that over here when they get accused of something, or they get, you know,
you don't go after the judge. You don't go after the judge.
Nobody really. Yeah.
The judge is the guy who's going to be deciding whether you're going to be innocent or guilty.
Exactly. And when you in his courtroom, when he say quiet or stand up, whatever he says, he is the boss there, right? But in the case of, I don't know, in the regular court of United States, do they do that like they follow also?
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Comparing it to what Trump is doing to this court.
Yeah, I mean, what Trump is saying is like, well, hey, you're coming after me in these criminal trials. You put me in jail. I can say anything I want. I can go on TV and say anything I want because you're coming after me because you don't want me to win the presidency. Yeah. So even some of these things, the one is a fraud trial for him defrauding banks years ago. It's nothing to do with the presidency, but he makes everything about that.
Yes, he's using that.
Yeah.
He is using that issue. So for some people who are not thinking right, or maybe they don't have, they don't understand really well the situation, they will side with Trump. So easy for people to be, some people are easy to, when they hear something, they believe him, especially that's Trump. They will believe anything he says.
But that's his argument. I mean, that's his argument. He came in, the lawyers came in there and they said, well, he's running for president and they are coming after him politically, so he has the right to stand up for himself and say what he wants. Yeah, and the judge is like, the lawyers on the other side are like, you have to be kidding me. Really? So he's saying these defamatory things. Somebody's going to get killed. And the judges up there are like, you're right. Somebody's going to get killed. And his lawyers are like, well, he hasn't said anything about getting, and like, yeah, and the lawyers on the other side are you kidding me? Of course he does.
He said anything. He said every time he come out from the courtroom, he will be happy to talk to the press, saying this and that. So I mean, that is
because we can't see what's going on in the courtroom. Federal courtrooms are not allowed to have cameras, and they can't have cameras or video cameras or anything. So all we can do is just hear what the press says after they come out. So he comes out first before anybody can get their story out to the news, and he says, they did this to me and they did this to me, and this person, and he's naming like some young assistant. And then now everybody has her name. And so what do? They find out everything they can about her, and then they post it. And now this person who was basically just working for the court now has to have police escorts and guards at their house. And in some cases have had to move from their houses because of so many death threats. I mean, the judge was talking about he got 100 and some threats in like a few minutes after Trump spoke.
Yeah, because like I said, because those people believe in everything he says.
Everything he says.
Everything. So I don't know if they're thinking right also. I'm sorry, but
Anyway.
Well,
so that's our Trump news. He's I was about to say before, I was going to say, yeah, who's back in the news, and I'm like, I'm tired of saying that. Because he's the top story every week, which it's what he wants. He wants to be the top dude. But one of the stories that I wanted to get to, because I love telling stories like this, is space news. And we have a great story that has been one of the top stories on all the news networks, because what do we want to know, Lolly? We want to know what's out there. Are we alone? And where did we come from? But unfortunately, we don't have that technology right now to answer these questions. I know I love stories like that.
I know.
I love stories like this.
That's why you want to talk about that.
I want to talk about it just quickly, because most of the news is really bad, and so I really love to talk about really uplifting stories. And so we had talked about the 𝗪cie mission before, which is the NASA space probe that they had sent out on a space mission into deep space, out there looking for stuff and sending back what it finds. And now it's on its way out there to look for some metal asteroid somewhere between Mars and Jupiter. Anyway, it's like 3.6 billion kilometers away. So this spaceship is carrying something very interesting, and it's a phone. And that phone can send info back to NASA via a laser beam. And it's called a DSOC, which is a Deep Space Optical Communication. I love these acronyms that they have. Basically, it's a high-speed bandwidth laser communication device sending and receiving data over an invisible near-infrared laser. And this experimental device is the next big step in deep space communication. Because, of course, the biggest problem that we have in sending out these space probes is it takes a long time to send a message back. Traditional radio waves can take days, weeks to send a signal back. So if there's a wrong course change or something's broken or something's wrong, we don't know about it for like weeks. So this thing is amazing. This device can send things faster, 10 to 100 times faster than the speed of a radio wave. And they did a test last week from 16 million kilometers away from Earth, and it reached the Halley telescope in 50 seconds. That's 40 times farther than the Earth is to the moon. And week before last, they sent what they did was they sent a signal to the ship, and it sent the signal back. And it's just incredible because, and this is what we'll get you to comment on, the future is the Artemis 2, which we've talked about many times here on the show because I love talking about this stuff. And that's on its way to the moon. That's going to be going to the moon in a couple of years, and that's going to be taking humans. And so they're going to be able to send back high-definition video from the moon's surface via this system that they have. And if people will ever travel to Mars or beyond Mars, it takes a day to send a freaking signal back. But with this new technology, they can send stuff back very quickly. So it just opens a whole new realm of communication out of deep space.
So now, Eric, my question here is this. I mean, okay, first is, why are they trying to because I heard people that went to the moon. The first guy is who's that, Armstrong on the 60s.
Long time ago.
Now, and they can continue trying to discover life outside Earth. I mean, they go to Mars. What is this going to Mars? Is this testing in Mars?
This thing's actually going beyond Mars.
Beyond Mars.
It's going to an asteroid made of metal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why are they? Why? This kind of stupid question. Why are they keep discovering this kind of? Do you think we human being, we people can live there in the future? Maybe not us because we're too old already.
Yeah.
Maybe by the time.
I don't think we're going to make it. We're not going to make it.
It's not our life, not in our lifetime. So what do you think of this? Discovery or?
Yeah, I think that's we as humans. I mean, one of the things that we are, it's part of what drives us is the curiosity of, are we alone? And I think one of the things that they have already planned, that they, Elon Musk, besides, ruining Twitter, one thing he wants to do is get to Mars and ruin Mars. I'm just kidding. But I mean, one of the things that he wants to do, one of his goals for his spaceship program was to get to Mars. That's what that giant rocket that we talked about last week that blew up, that's what that rocket's supposed to do. It's supposed to get humans to Mars. And so that's what I was hoping that, before in my lifetime, that I would get to see a human set foot on Mars. And they want to set up a community in Mars. And, should we be doing that? I don't know. But it's kind of interesting that because they believe that maybe at one time there was life on Mars. It's really hard to tell because we're jumping, tens of millions of years. But it would be. I think that's one of human nature is to find out if we are really alone in the universe or there is something else out there.
Yeah, because I remember that up to now we've been saying, oh, there's a UFO. Oh, somewhere in I don't know
if that's
I don't know if that's true.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, so this is something like that. I mean, they're trying to discover something somewhere.
Yeah.
And if I just have to put this in some perspective, why are they're spending a lot of money trying to do this?
It's very expensive, which is why we don't go to the moon. The reason that we stopped going to the moon for how many years has it been since we put a man on the moon? It's because it's expensive.
Yeah.
Expensive, and there was nothing else to see. It's like, all right, we've seen it.
It's for their own ego, I think. So you know what? Talk to those guys. Tell them that use the money to feed people somewhere in the world.
Well, I know that's an interesting argument there. One thing that I know I have done in the past is getting closer to the space. Is I did skydiving before. I was going to ask you if you had done skydiving. You ever been skydiving?
Not skydiving. I did just a parasailing.
Oh, parasail. Because I did skydiving on my birthday. About I don't know how many 20 to 30 years ago.
But
I remember, and this is leading into the next story here, obviously. I remember the training. The coach said, if you make a mistake or your chute doesn't open for whatever reason, and I was thinking, he's going to tell us what to do if the chute doesn't open, like how. And his answer was, their chances of death are near 100%.
Oh my goodness.
So, like, okay. So I would think I did this, 30 years ago. So you would think that it's gotten safer now, but actually technology has made sometimes things more dangerous, especially when you get into these new things called wingsuits. And a wingsuit is a suit that you wear. You may have seen it on a Tom Cruise movie, where you jump out and then you fly. You fly a little bit and then you pull your chute. And surprising enough, this was invented in 1912. This inventor, the pioneer of all these things, inventor of the parachute, he came up with this combo way of a flying suit and a parachute. And to prove it, he jumped off the Eiffel Tower. He's supposed to come down, soar over the crowds, and then pull his parachute. And you know what happened?
What?
He died.
Oh,
anyway,
no.
But years and years later, they've come up and they've kind of perfected this thing. But this week, we learned of a new possible way of dying from jumping out of a plane in a wingsuit, and that's getting hit by the plane that you're jumping out of, which is what happened in France. So I thought this was an interesting story, because in 2018, a wingsuit skydiver, wearing a parachute, he jumped out of the plane. A whole bunch of them were about to jump out of the plane with their things and the cameras and everything, make a formation, whatever they do. The first guy jumped out, and then the plane flew a little lower to let everybody else out, because one guy's falling, and so they come down a little lower and let the next guy out, so they're all the same space. And the plane turned and hit the guy who was in his sky suit, and killed him.
Wow.
So they were thinking, that your death would come from hitting the ground, but no, he died instantly when the plane hit him. So this week, this has been going through multiple court cases and so forth, and this week it was finally decided, and they gave the pilot manslaughter for turning the plane, because they say he was negligent and he didn't talk to them exactly what the plan was. He was just, he didn't do something he didn't do right, and so they got him for. And it turns out, that I got interested in this story because I thought it was something we could talk about. 2015 to 2020, 13 people have died in wingsuit accidents, and they say that there is one death for every 500 jumps with a wingsuit. So Lolly Tolentino, if you're thinking about getting a wingsuit,
forget it.
I would suggest against it.
Never mind.
But anyway, getting on to climate news, because we love to do climate news here. Lolly Tolentino, do you know what A23 is?
No.
I'm surprised you don't know, because you know what? I didn't know either. I had no idea.
It's the ice.
I had no idea what A23 is. I think you can guess what it is, though. It's an iceberg.
Iceberg, yeah.
It's an iceberg. And it's a big one. And in fact, right now, it's the biggest one. And currently, it's the largest iceberg, has broken away, and it's just floating around the Arctic right now, more than twice the size of London. It was grounded on the seafloor in 1986 when it broke off from the main Arctic shelf, and it's been sitting in the Wendell seafloor until this week.
Wow.
And it melted to the point where it started to float, and it's now floating to somewhere.
So why is this happening, Eric?
Well,
what is the answer?
According to what they believe, the problem with A23 is the water surrounding it has just not been as cold as it's been for the last 100 or 200 years. And so that's why that particular iceberg has now shrunk so much that it's lifted off the bottom of the ocean. Now, the interesting thing is that A23 was not always the largest. There was another one, A68, back in the 70s, and then later A76 in 2021. But they, too, have shrunk because the water around them is heating up. And they've melted so much now that A23 is now the clear leader as the largest iceberg in the world that's just floating around. In fact, it moves at 5 kilometers a day, and they're not exactly sure where it's going.
That's the scary part, actually.
Isn't that scary?
Yeah,
that
that's scary because
piece of ice the size of London,
yeah. Oh my
or
God.
twice the size of London.
Oh my goodness. You know, you can just imagine here when it's raining. You know, there's a flash flood or something. That, you know, when there's a flash flood, it kills a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how much more? You can imagine this one, iceberg,
I mean,
and twice as the size of London.
yeah. I mean, this thing. You know,
Wow.
if you're talking about the iceberg that hit the Titanic, this thing is hundreds of times
my
larger than this. This massive, huge piece of ice, and most of the ice is underwater. So, you know, a lot of it sticks up out of the water, but almost all of it is underwater. So this thing is just floating at 5 kilometers a day, going somewhere.
Oh my goodness.
And I just, you know, this is one of the issues of climate change, that it's very hard to, you know, people say, you know, this is, well, okay, you know, this is supposed to happen. This is the cycle. But in our lifetime, we have not had icebergs at this massive a size break off and then begin to float. And I think that's why the climate scientists are getting worried about some of these things, because, you know, what happens if an iceberg floats into a shipping lane or floats near to a, you know, a sea shelf which is near the coastline? You know, that can cause, and I'm reading all about this thing, and I didn't want to go along, you know, because there's so much news about this thing, but all the possibilities of things that could happen from something that big, just, you know, floating around the ocean.
Oh well, that could kill, like I said.
So anyway,
Oh my God.
moving on to some other, you know, things that just popped up in the news, and I know did I want to talk about this? I wasn't sure. But because we spoke so much about the George Floyd case back when he was killed, and I just thought I would mention this because the guy who killed George Floyd, who had him in that chokehold for 9 minutes, basically held the chokehold on him until he died, and made one of the single biggest news stories of the year. That police officer, 𝗪tože𝗀𝗱, he was sentenced. He was convicted of murder. Was given like 20 years in sentence, 20 years in prison, and then another 22 years. And he appealed it, of course, saying he didn't get a fair trial, and he lost the appeal. So he's the one that I guess showed us that police brutality does exist, because they got it on video.
Oh yeah.
The whole thing was on video. Anyway, someone stabbed him this week.
Wow.
Just the other day, I think it was day before yesterday, someone stabbed him in prison this past Friday. And the report came out that someone in prison was stabbed. They gave him life-saving measures, and they were able to stop the bleeding. They got him to the hospital. But later we discovered out that it was the guy who had choked out George Floyd. Now, you know, a lot of people said, oh, he deserves it.
Oh, yeah, that will be the comment of people, especially, you know, I mean, the family or people who hate this guy, 𝗪tože𝗀𝗱.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird thing, especially in the United States, because literally the line went right down the middle. You know, people saying that, hey, this guy George Floyd, he does drugs, he was fighting the police. You know, the guy had every right to hold him down. And then there are other people that said, you know, hey, he was a human being. He literally told us he was dying as he was being, you know, choked. That, you know, this was flat out murder.
Yeah, it was a murder. You know, there's a live video on that. I mean, you can see how
it's hard.
It's hard to watch.
It's hard when there's a video. I mean, what people's thing, what a lot of people were saying was, this has always been going on. You know, police brutality has been going on against black people and minorities forever. We just didn't have good phones before.
Yeah.
And now we got smartphones. And we can take really high definition video.
Yeah, anybody can take, like, if you're doing something, Eric, I can just video it, and this is my evidence. So, I mean, that's why you got to be careful.
Don't let Lolly Tito put me away in jail.
Yeah, if I see you.
You know what's interesting, Lolly, on a side note here, Larry Nassar, who we spoke about, I don't know how many, a while ago, you know, he's the guy that was convicted for sexually assaulting all those young gymnasts. It was just a few months ago. We didn't talk about it, but he was stabbed.
Also?
Yeah, he was stabbed in prison. In prison.
You know, that's the thing. You know what? That's why, I know, we should all be careful not to go to jail.
Not to go to jail.
Because this
people with knives.
Yeah, people could kill you inside.
People
the
in Galilee jail.
Oh yeah, if you are the boss here outside, they have bosses there inside the prison.
Inside.
So when you get there, my God,
Stay out of jail. So
Yep.
Lolly Tolentino and I are going to try our best to stay out of jail ourselves. Right now, we need to stay out of the show because we are. That was not such a great segue because we are out of time here on the World News Jam. But for me, Eric Lecain and Lolly Tolentino here on the World News Jam, thank you so much for tuning in this week. We have enjoyed talking to you about some of the most interesting stories going on around the world. So for me, Eric and Lolly, and everybody here on the World News Jam on DCRJ and RJTV, we will see everybody next week. Please take care out there, and we will see you then.
The views and comments